Hey folks, it's Swank Ivy back with another Letters to an Asexual. This is number 81. Wearing my glasses today because I think I scratched my eyeball when I was wearing my contacts yesterday. So you get Glasses Swank Ivy. Yay! I think Glasses Swank Ivy is just as capable of running this channel. It's still Pride, so I'm going to cover a letter today that has me speaking with someone who believes he's queer royalty, in that he believes he can tell us who belongs in this community. And so it doesn't quite start that way, but it goes there pretty fast. And I think I should also warn y'all that there's a lot of ugliness in this one, possibly a little bit more references to self-harm or suicide or violence. To be honest, it's been a little while since I read it, so I just remember it being overall pretty unpleasant. So, and of course there's a lot of ace phobia as usual, but that's pretty much this whole series, so take caution while listening to this if you're in any kind of sensitive place. I should also say that my responses in general are at least somewhat comforting replies to the crap that he throws at me, so it will not go uncommented, and he will not go unpunished. Let's see, so let me bring up my letter to an asexual. This is from YouTube comments initially, and sometime after that, because I ended up blocking this person, he followed me to my websites to try to harass me. So alright, so first he opens with, asexuality is a sexual orientation like atheism is a religion, which is not at all. Wow, you really told me there, John. So I replied, this misconception demonstrates a poor understanding of what a sexual orientation is. The sexual orientation is a perspective on what kind of people someone finds attractive. Asexuality means not finding anyone sexually attractive. It's how asexual people are oriented. Your comparison to atheism fails because a religion does imply a belief, while atheism is a perspective on God's non-existence, not a religion itself. Not sure why you think semantics like this matter, though? We exist regardless. He replies, acting like he's quoting me, but he misquoted me. And he wrote, a religion does not imply a belief? What? And I said, why would you quote me and not actually quote me? I said, a religion does imply a belief. And you stuck a not in there. And he says, my bad, I misread. But seriously, why should a lack of something be considered in any way an orientation to that thing? Why would anyone go around claiming an identity based on something they're not? I don't like Twilight. I guess that makes me an A-twihard. Tack me onto an acronym and let me into the movie fans parade. And allow me to piggyback on a decades-old movement, even though I haven't paid my dues. Oh, there it is. And there's never been institutional discrimination against me. My reply. Very poor comparison. If you're an atheist, you've still got a perspective on God. No, it's not a religion, but then you still have to figure out how to live your life in a world where most people expect you to have this thing. Same with asexuality. It's gross to say we're appropriating LGBT space without paying dues. I don't have space to explain to you the institutional discrimination / other prejudice we do face, so please watch my video, Letters to an Asexual number 15, which shows you that you're wrong. These were YouTube comments that happened during a time when character limits were a thing, and I think they are not anymore in YouTube comments. Continuing, furthermore, it's offensive to suggest that it's unreasonable to want support or fellowship over something unless you're being hurt or killed because of it. Nobody asks to see your discrimination punch card at the door at the gay meeting. Some gay people deal with worse discrimination than others, and no one says you have to have been hurt X amount before you're actually queer. Since people are predisposed to say that we don't even exist, how are they going to see / acknowledge our problems anyway? He replies, To claim that anyone says you don't exist is the whiniest, stupid form of hyperbole possible. And given what actual queer people have to go through, every one of them, to trump up something like saying that someone says you don't exist as an excuse to feel you're in need of support is what's really offensive. You could say you were a mermaid. And when I said that mermaids don't exist, I wouldn't be saying that you don't exist, just that you're not a mermaid. I said, okay, President of Queerness has spoken. You know our experience and can definitively say it is not that bad compared to what people with real problems face. Watch my video, Letters to an Asexual number 15, to get an idea of the documented kinds of prejudice and discrimination asexual people deal with beyond erasure. You can choose to educate yourself on experiences not familiar to you, or you can continue to be ignorant about how we're hurt since somebody else's pain is more visible to you. And you should really try to read more carefully, because I didn't imply that the only problem asexual people have is people believing asexuality doesn't exist. That is what causes people to not see our problems, and to always blame them on something else they think is real, or to claim they aren't happening or aren't that bad. What's really offensive is your really disappointing willful ignorance. You're saying nothing new and refusing to educate yourself, so I'm closing this thread. And so, instead of realizing that this is the time to stop trying to talk to me, he stalks me onto some other platform so that he can continue to send messages to me, because I really need to hear more of this. So he commented on my website, and he said, think a little about the fact that you're so invested in being asexual that if someone says they don't believe in asexuality, it threatens your very existence. They think we don't exist. I've got no problem whatsoever with people not wanting or having sex, but I give it the side eye when they call that a sexual orientation and think it makes them a special snowflake instead of ordinary. I should make a list of terms that you can always tell somebody is a big douchebag. If they say special snowflake, if they say the attack helicopter joke, if they say SJW unironically, like the way that people talk about coming from Tumblr, etc. I swear there's like a punch card list, and special snowflake is always on there. I'd be happy to live and let live, except they want to tag a letter onto the LGBTQ, and I don't think it's appropriate or deserved. So instead of addressing him directly, I sort of pretended I was talking about him. And I said, "Aw, poor John is so personally insulted over my asexuality activism that he's trying to use the same bad argument I already called him out for. Guy just can't make a good argument, so he reuses the same sad straw man he already failed so incredibly hard with. No, honey, I said our problems are hard to see if you refuse to look at them, which is what people do when they claim asexuality isn't a real thing." But instead of looking at the video I repeatedly recommended to him, he went with the laughable special snowflake and asexuality equals not having sex and no one cares, and you just want a cause to cling to arguments. I don't know, man. If it so eats at your guts that we might get attention, maybe you should ask yourself why you're so personally invested in denying it to us, especially since I told you where you can see the problems asexual people deal with, which asexual people aren't claiming are identical to LGBT issues, even when the battles we fight are sometimes analogous and nearly always rooted in heteronormative assumptions we're both hurt by. But you wouldn't look. Nope. Gotta try so hard to shut me up. Willful ignorance like this always makes me feel pity. So he returns and says, "My lifestyle is that of an asexual person, but I know I'm not an asexual because it's only because I'm fat and anxious that I don't want to have sex. Not because to not do it is a sexual orientation. I understand, unlike most people who claim to be ace, that to have a libido and jack off is sexual, so I can't be asexual. But my life is that of one who claims that orientation, so I know all the things you talk about in that video, Letters to an Atheist 15. That's not what it's called. And have experienced most of them, and they ain't shit. If I weren't gay, I might be tempted to make up a special snowflake status, though, and I could pass perfectly as asexual. I understand the need to want to belong to something and not be straight. So I know why people who are straight but don't have sex want to belong to LGBTQ. Luckily, I do because I'm gay, even if I'm not practicing. The vast majority of asexuals are straight women who, for whatever reason, abstain from sex with partners and instead have a rich fantasy life consuming gay pornography, slash and yaoi. That's sexuality, because sex is mostly in the mind, and their sexuality is straight, because it is representations of men that are turning them on. But they're such fangirls of fictional gay boys that they don't want to be straight. They want to be LGBTQ. And tack on another letter for their special snowflake ass. It's unbearable. Wow. People saying things on the internet seems to be so terrible to him. Maybe it's a real problem. Oh my gosh. For anyone to not have sex for any reason is perfectly fine. I give it my complete approval. Oh, thank goodness. But it's a choice. It's not biological. Good thing no one said it was. I think gay people need to start admitting that sometimes our orientation is not biological, and there's an element of choice, and more often than that, development. And it's okay, because if being gay is a choice, it's not the wrong choice. It's only when asexuals want in on LGBTQ, when they're nothing but straight fangirls, that I get offended. They are rubberneckers, fetishizing us. That doesn't qualify them to join. They don't have the right, they don't have the cred, and they bring down our image and do us harm by association with something so void of legitimacy. All of the problems you talk about in that video regarding prejudice is because you say I'm asexual, whereas if you just said you didn't have sex, people would have no problem unless they're complete asshats who do things like judge a person for having tattoos or how they dress. You're never going to get rid of that. But when you claim a special snowflake status for a longer term inside of a lifestyle that literally everyone goes through at some point, people start to side-eye you and think there's something wrong with you. Your behavior would get no side-eye except from the insipid and worthless, but the claim of an orientation that does not exist puts people off, especially when it has such an awful name as asexual. That's what single-celled life forms are, the lowest form of life on Earth. If you decided to call yourself a reptile American, I think you would understand why people thought you were cold-blooded and creepy. Asexual, unfortunately, carries similar connotations. Your problems can go away if you'd stop thinking it warranted waving a flag. No one cares about your behavior. Whereas even when we were all in the closet, we were hated. It's our behavior and very existence that gets people oppressed. And so no fucking A gets tagged on LGBTQ. Nope. And I reply, except I'm still talking about him without talking to him. I seem to have a problem named John, who just can't quit me. What a troll. Even though I blocked him from posting on my videos, he keeps sending me weird messages. His latest screed, my lifestyle is that of an asexual person, but I know I'm not an asexual because it's only because I'm fat and anxious that I don't want to have sex, not because to not do it is a sexual orientation. Sorry, bud, but asexual people aren't all abstinent. There is no asexual lifestyle. Despite all the ranting you do about how we don't deserve any educational efforts or recognition or allyship, you sure haven't done much to pay attention to what we're actually saying about ourselves. Behavior isn't orientation, and I thought most people kind of understood that very simple concept by now, but apparently not. Quote, I understand, unlike most people who claim to be ace, that to have a libido and jack off is sexual, so I can't be asexual. Gotcha. Asexual isn't a sexual orientation, but jacking off is. Nope, asexual people wank at the same rates non-asexual people do. But your claim that you get to decide what defines asexual people from outside the asexual experience is just precious. Quote, but my life is that of one who claims that orientation, so I know all of the things you talk about in that video, Letters to an Atheist 15, and have experienced most of them, and they ain't shit. It's not called Letters to an Atheist. Pay attention. And again, this is what you're saying as the king of queerness here: adoption denial, prejudice and discrimination that has been documented at workplaces, mental health professionals discriminating against you and saying your orientation is a disorder, corrective rape, and sexual assault, etc. All of that ain't shit. Says John, because after all, no one is really being hurt unless one of your group has been killed for your orientation, and it's always a lot easier to say violence happens toward us for some other reason that's more visible. We'll let you know if we start getting asexual bashed, should we ever have an established known meeting place to come out of. Quote, if I weren't gay, I might be tempted to make up a special snowflake status though, and I could pass perfectly as asexual. For someone who thinks we're all about yearning to be special, you sure are fixated on specialness yourself. King of Queerness has decided that we're not actually special enough to be in his club, but yeah, we're the snowflakes. Quote, I understand the need to want to belong to something and not be straight, so I know why people who are straight but don't have sex want to belong to LGBTQ. I understand the need to invalidate people you can't be bothered to extend empathy to because they're not enough like you based on a deliberately distorted description, but really, you're gonna have to stop making the heart of your identity orbit around who gives you enough shit for it. And I'll enjoy telling all my trans, asexual, and LGBT asexual pals that they're really just straight people who don't have sex. Especially the sexually active ones in same-sex relationships. Though I guess you'd just say, then you're not ace, and I get to tell you what your orientation is based on what I've observed about your behavior. Behavior is totally what defines orientation. You do realize that statements like this reveal that you believe straight is the default, right? That's really sad. Quote, luckily, I do because I'm gay, even if I'm not practicing. The vast majority of asexuals are straight women who, for whatever reason, abstain from sex with partners and instead have a rich fantasy life consuming gay pornography / and yaoi. Wow, it's like he knows us. I almost never come across anyone in the ace community who's not a straight woman obsessed with anime porn. LOL. Remember, folks, we don't have problems with hypocrisy and prejudice, because nobody would ever make sweeping generalizations about us and use them to mock and invalidate us, right? Quote, that's sexuality, because sex is mostly in the mind, and their sexuality is straight, because it is representations of men that are turning them on, but they're such fangirls of fictional gay boys that they don't want to be straight, they want to be LGBTQ, and tack on another letter for their special snowflake ass. It's unbearable. Nods sagely, I write. Listen to the sage, folks, and yes, unbearable. Ladies on the internet writing slash fiction and enjoying gay pairings are oppressing you and hurting you. That, my friends, is real hurt and pain. When people you don't know and don't have to look at enjoy something in a way that makes you invalidate their sexuality. But remember, the stuff I mentioned asexual people go through ain't shit. And I should note that I understand why some people get frustrated at that fetishization thing. I understand that's a thing. It's also not what asexuality is, and it's not an argument against asexuality, assuming that we are all straight women who fetishize anime boys. That's weird. Quote, for anyone to not have sex for any reason is perfectly fine. I give it my complete approval, but it's a choice. It's not biological. And we again have not wanting to have sex being upheld as the definition of asexuality. Do you just black out and ignore all the parts you don't like / don't understand? And excuse me while I laugh at a gay man telling other people their orientation is a choice. Quote, I think gay people need to start admitting that sometimes our orientation is not biological, and there's an element of choice, and more often than that, development. And it's okay, because if being gay is a choice, it's not the wrong choice. Oh gee, but if an asexual person comes to their identity through the process you deem okay for gay people, they're invalidated, because it's a choice. Gay people can do the same thing, and it's not invalid. Actually, I think everyone's orientation is a mixture of nature and nurture, and that it's not always the same mix. But it's really disgusting for anyone to put their foot down and say, I choose to define your experience this way, and I'm going to write you off as a yaoi-obsessed fangirl because that makes it easier to mock you regardless of whether it's true. Quote, it's only when asexuals want in on LGBTQ, when they're nothing but straight fangirls, that I get offended. They're rubberneckers, fetishizing us. That doesn't qualify them to join. They don't have the right. They don't have the cred. And they bring down our image and do us harm by association with something so void of legitimacy. Again, the king of queerness has spoken. Our experience isn't enough. We're all just fetishists. Even those of us who have nothing to do with fangirling, which includes me, as I've never even seen or read a yaoi fan creation or obsessed over anything of the sort. And yet, even though you say you only want to exclude them of this description, it doesn't really matter if I'm not, does it? I might as well be. We're all the same, after all. Despite that queer people all over understand that our issues are often analogous and sometimes come from the same sources, expected heteronormativity, and have invited us to ally with them, people like you are so obsessed with who belongs in the club that you're willing to hold us to different standards. It's so sad and closed-minded. And really, you have laughably poor arguments. You're just fetishizing yaoi fangirls who are really all straight prudes, making an orientation out of not having sex is seriously gross and offensive. You look like such a baby man saying this. Quote, all of the problems you talk about in that video regarding prejudice is because you say I'm asexual, whereas if you just said you didn't have sex, people would have no problem, unless they're complete asshats who do things like judge a person for having tattoos and for how they dress. You're never going to get rid of that. Ah, okay, but they can just smell gay on you? Even when you're non-practicing? Even when you don't say, I am gay? Sorry, but again, you're speaking from really disgusting ignorance here. If you're asexual and your relationships don't look like what they're, quote, supposed to, people don't just leave you alone. And it's pretty hilarious to say the majority just accepts I don't have sex. Though that's not a synonym, even though you keep insisting it is. Just like gay people, we're expected to have straight sex too. And the argument that if we don't want to get shit for our orientation, we should just stay in the closet is really pretty surprising coming from a gay dude. Quote, but when you claim special snowflake status for a longer term inside of a lifestyle that literally everyone goes through at some point, LOL, because children are asexual and not immature. Nope, lots of nope. So, you can be non-practicing but still be gay since it's your orientation, and even having sex with a woman couldn't make you not be gay, but asexual people are defined as asexual through not having sex, and they become some other orientation through having sex. No, that's just the difference between orientation and behavior. And again with the special snowflake status that you believe is invalid unless someone else decides we're queer enough. Seriously, you're obsessed with how we identify. It's so peculiar that you're spewing all these vitriolic narratives, which are very similar to what heteronormative jerks foist onto non-straight people. Listen to yourself, foaming at the mouth, over how you're not special, get out, you don't belong here, you're daring to speak about your orientation makes my blood boil, you're hurting me by talking about yourselves, and trying to find acceptance because, after all, you're just a bunch of gay porn-obsessed women. It's like you read an instruction manual on Tumblr about how to make bad arguments, to invalidate and hurt other people, while claiming they don't have anything comparable to your problems. Enjoy that gold at the oppression Olympics, son. Quote, people start to side-eye you and think there's something wrong with you. Your behavior would get no side-eye except from the insipid and worthless, but the claim of an orientation that does not exist puts people off. Just people like you who are intolerant and unwilling to listen. You have a personal investment in not accepting us, for whatever reason. Maybe you just have a psychological dependence on being special? Quote, especially when it has such an awful name as asexual. That's what single-celled life forms are, the lowest form of life on Earth. If you decided to call yourself a reptile American, I think you would understand why people thought you were cold-blooded and creepy. Asexual, unfortunately, carries similar connotations. Oh yeah, the problems we have are totally partially the fault of the name we use. LOL, lots of asexual reproduction is by organisms that are not single-celled, but I wouldn't expect good science from you. Go for it, while telling us we're all yaoi fangirls. Insult the name of the orientation too, and compare us to non-human things. But after all, when we have problems and other people attack us over ridiculous things, it's our fault, right? We deserve it. Quote, your problems can go away if you'd stop thinking it warranted waving a flag. Haha. Yeah, I guess that time a guy tried to sexually assault me because I said I was non-sexual long before there was a community wasn't really happening because I didn't have a flag yet. We totally never talked about our problems in isolation or had problems that we dealt with all by ourselves until there was a community to pretend we have an orientation and share issues. All the heteronormative expectations and whatnot aren't actually the problem. The problem is that being attacked is the natural result of us coming out. Gee. Considering how many people find asexual communities and are compelled to post their life story about how terrifying and isolating it was to be all alone, some even to the point of discussing suicide attempts and self-harm, or trapping themselves in relationships they hated, all because they were told they were expected to and didn't deserve love unless they did. I'm gonna say our problems were just invisible to you, not non-existent. Wow. What a disgusting thing to say to someone, that we didn't have problems until we talked about ourselves, thereby causing the problems. Quote, no one cares about your behavior, then stop paying attention to it. Quote, whereas even when we were all in the closet, we were hated. It's our behavior and our very existence that people oppress. That's right, there's only one queer oppression. It's one definitive experience, which is the only one that deserves a discussion. It's you. Only you. Don't worry, honey. You're special. You really are. Quote, and so no fucking A gets tagged on LGBTQ. Nope. The king of queerness again has spoken. The Gay and Lesbian Task Force, which invited my asexual contingent into their space earlier this year and had us give a talk about asexuality, disagrees with you. The Gay Voices section of the Huffington Post that did multiple features on asexuality this year disagrees with you. The Trevor Project, which got calls from suicidal asexual people, accepted the ace community's help in developing materials to help them from a queer perspective, and they disagree with you. But you are king of queerness. Put those folks in the dungeon and rule with your rainbow iron fist. As long as there's no fucking A in that rainbow, we can all be happy. Don't worry, lonely king. You can still be queer even if someone else gets attention. It won't take anything away from you or do anything to limit your rights. It's a little sad that someone else getting help and support is something you think victimizes you. Sounds a little like the straight people claiming their marriage is undermined if gay people can have it. But hey, I guess certain kinds of people can't feel special unless they put a no asexuals allowed sign on their treehouse door. Have fun in there. The rest of the community that believes in inclusiveness and doesn't depend on assigning false definitions to people they don't understand in order to invalidate them will be having a great time at our little ball. We won't feel punished if you don't accept the invitation. I have seen a lot of progress in our community since then. The inclusiveness of general queer groups has increased to, in many cases, explicitly include asexual people, as well as, in some cases, putting the Q and the I and the A on there. And I know that there are some intersex activists who don't like to be considered queer, but some who do. And, of course, there are some people who think that the A should stand for allies, but even though allies are important, they're not a member of the marginalized communities that we're talking about in this sense. So it seems rather weird that you would even think that the A stands for allies, but not asexual people. The bottom line is that people are starting to listen and understand the huge diversity that exists in our communities, how often people who are asexual are also other stripes of queer, either in their gender or in their romantic interests, and how even when they are not, as in the case of heteroromantic people or people who are demisexual, whose partner situation can look like a straight relationship, a typical straight relationship, or people like me who are aromantic and are not necessarily read as queer in all situations. I mean, I understand that there is a certain loss of safety that sometimes comes with being a visibly queer person, and that's not something that I'm arguing against. I'm not saying every queer person, including asexual people that identify as queer, have the same capacity to experience marginalization, prejudice, oppression, or violent attacks. But there is no purpose in pointing at certain people who are affected negatively by heteronormativity and saying, I don't accept that those people deserve any fellowship in a community that is uniquely positioned to help them and understand them. And the idea that we're just there to get attention or steal a spotlight or usurp resources without paying our dues, I don't know what dues they think that we're not paying. Because just like the majority of the members of other stripes of the rainbow in this queer community, most of us do our homework, most of us understand our history, and if that king of queerness fella understood his history at all, he wouldn't have said a lot of those things about behavior. He wouldn't have said a lot of those things about expecting sex to look like a certain thing. He wouldn't have said that really ignorant stuff about yaoi fangirls and whatnot. The expansion that I've seen in willingness to understand and inclusiveness and belief that we are participating in these communities to give as well as get has really transformed the way that we all have our fellowship and our community together. I'm seeing a lot less screaming like that. I'm seeing a lot less no fucking A. And I mean, just like with bisexual people, just like with trans people, just like with pan people, just like with non-binary people, you see people who are in a more plentiful and maybe more established letter of the queer community saying that they don't accept this. But I mean, progress is forward. It's always going to be more toward supporting more people. It's always going to be more inclusive. It's always going to be with more understanding and acceptance for various types of diversity. And I'm sure you've seen some of my other videos if y'all are subscribers or if you've been watching my videos for a long time, where I deal with people who are they're upset about attention that we might be getting, and they're upset that we want to use labels. You see a lot of frustration over just call yourself a human, just be you, just stop labeling yourself, you don't need all this terminology. And I've covered that in several of my previous videos, and what you really come to understand if you really listen to people is that it's not about labeling, it's about trying to understand each other as human beings with language. This is how we communicate with each other. And once you have more of that language, so that you can start to understand the diversity that exists in the spectrum of human sexuality, then you actually get closer to a future that these people simplistically declare should be now, where those labels don't matter, where nobody's going to ask that question or judge you for it because they're just going to follow your lead and understand that it might not be exactly what a lot of people expect, that you're probably a straight person who is very typically sexual and is probably cisgender and all of that, that they'll start to learn that those things aren't a given and that alternatives to it are much more common. And then that world that these whiny people keep insisting we should act like is already here, where just be human, just be you, will actually be more possible, where we won't have to worry as much about defining things. But as it is now, people don't understand, and so we still definitely need a lot of conversations about these things. So that's why we're trying to have them. That's why we wave flags. That's why we say, hey, world, we're here. And if you want to ask the question as to what does that mean and what is your experience, we can talk to you about it. And sometimes we can help some of you understand that this may be part of your life and you didn't even know it. This can help you understand your relationships better. This may help you understand why certain things didn't feel right. This may even give you new terminology to understand maybe why romantic orientation did not match up to sexual orientation for you and you never understood why. The asexual community has been having these conversations for a very long time, and they've become much more mainstream now that we've become more mainstream. And they're very useful in plethora of other situations. And it is primarily other queer people who benefit from these conversations, though obviously it could also have some usefulness for someone who is cisgender and straight, but primarily it's those of us who do not automatically just turn on the television and see ourselves represented every minute of every day, who need some more road signs, who need some more guidance, who need some more role models, and who need some more conversations about things that sound more like their lives. If that had been more prevalent in media, in conversations with this John guy's friends and family, he probably wouldn't be sitting here trying to convince me that I read anime porn and I think it's an orientation, and being so sure about it. And it really should be embarrassing for him at this point, but he's probably continued to be just as ignorant, unfortunately. People who are that gleeful about telling someone that they don't belong somewhere usually stay pretty hateful unless they have a big revelation for some reason. So I have these conversations partly because people like him aren't listening, but people like y'all are listening, and that's why you're here. And so when I have these conversations, I most of the time don't expect to reach the person who is being this ignorant, but I like to use them as an example of the type of ignorance that does exist out in the world that doesn't have to stay that way. So let's wrap this one up here, and I hope everyone has had a nice month of June up to this point. I'm supposed to be on a podcast that is related to people who come out somewhere in the queer community as an older person. And I participated on this podcast called Graying Rainbows. So that'll be out next month. And you can watch my social media to see me link to it if that would be something you'd be interested in. I'm talking about asexuality on there. So that'll be out, I believe this week, July 2nd or so. That's what I was told anyway. So I'll be sure to link anyone who is interested. You can watch my Twitter or my Tumblr. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching.